that's when it got real, really real for me. And I was like, you know what, like I gotta get things together. Life is coming really fast. I got another child I'm responsible for, and so that's when it really got really serious. So many things that we have in common than that we don't have in common, right? And even some doctrines, I might not, agree with everything that you may feel like goes along with Pentecostals, or vice versa. Just growing up, studying, trying to understand, and then like this, I'm growing, right? It's a journey, and still figuring things out as I go.
When do you think you became serious about it? When you're like, man, I think I need to understand this.
Yeah.
This faith, this Bible, this relationship with God.
So I'll let me backtrack like this. Let me say, like, growing up as a PK, growing up as pastor's kid. That's what PK means, if you guys don't know.
It's that churchy with John Sims language.
Growing up as a PK, like church, everything I knew, and then I was good at faking it.
You were good at being good.
Yeah, I was good at faking it. I knew what to do, knew what to say, what not to say.
Who not to say it to.
I was really good at all that stuff.
I wish I'd get tore up sometimes.
Man, I was really good at that. And I faked it for a really long time. But then it got to a point where, like, I needed it, and that's where it really got, like, really real to me. I mean, growing up in church, I learned about the Bible, learned about Christ and stuff, but I think that genuine relationship, I don't think I had that until, like, I got older. When Alea was pregnant with Jordan, and Jordan's middle name is Grace, because that was my saving grace. She was my saving grace. God's grace, right? And so, like, that's when it got real, really real for me. And I was like, you know what? Like, I gotta get things together. Life is coming really fast. I got another child I'm responsible for. And so that's when it really got really serious for me. So I was like,
you said she's 9, right? You just told me she's 9.
Yeah, she's 9.
So, 2013.
Yeah. So that's when it got real for me. So I was great at faking it, man. I was really good.
Was that like 2015, bro? It's 2014 now. Or it's 2024 now.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, she was born 2014, March 1st. Okay. But 2013 is when I found out they were pregnant.
Yeah. Man.
So that summer, I mean, it was August when I found out. It was great. It was wild for me.
So it wasn't marriage for you that did that? It was like, you think it was more your first kid?
Yeah. I mean, that news, hey, I'm pregnant. Like, man, like, what? No, you're not. You're not pregnant.
There's no feeling like that.
Yeah. We weren't even together at the time. So, like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like, no, you're not. And then I got to let all these people know that I've been faking it. Gotta let my parents know, the church know. That was really hard for me. But through that, though, God's grace, we got married, and marriage is hard, right? But we've been so blessed, since then. It's the best, best thing. One of the best things that's happened to me, in my life. Because I was out there, man, I was definitely straddling the fence. I was here one day, here the other day, and stuff. But that really caused me to make a decision, and really follow Christ. And since then, I've been doing my best to follow Christ, learn more about God's word, be more serious, be more intentional about my relationship with Christ, get closer with Christ. And I think I'm definitely not where I feel like I should be, but I feel like I'm doing okay. Yeah. I feel like I'm doing all right.
I don't think it's a bad thing to admit. I think we sometimes try to be a little too humble, and it's kind of like even Paul said, like, imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Yeah.
It's like, why do we think it's such a bad thing to be like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm trying to live the right way, and according to the scriptures, like, no, it's okay. Like, if would I want my kids to imitate how I am? Like, obviously, I want to improve on some things, you know? But it's like, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. Right. Obviously, you want to improve. I want to improve. We want to continue to grow closer to Jesus and look more like him. But I think it's okay to say, like, you know what? I'm trying to set an example for other people to live, and especially my family, especially my kids, right? Because you only have so much time with them. Yeah. And, it's hard to think about that, especially when they start school and everything. So I know you're a little farther ahead in that than we are. Our oldest is in kindergarten, but it's fast, man.
Yeah.
I think I wanted to ask you about the faith thing for sure, and it's kind of interesting because you're doing the churchy with John Sims thing, but there is also sort of this clear distinction, I think, in the content style, moving from like stories and like relatability from the like growing up, churchy, that kind of stuff, which is like a fun little niche thing for sure. Like lots of people can, you're churchy if like, fill in the blank. Like that's a cool idea, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people relate to it. And moving into, you said you want to move into more serious topics, and even just posting like the scriptural videos that you've been posting for a little while now, I feel like this heart from you of like, this is what matters. This is what I want people to know. It's not just like funny stories and things like that, you know? So that I think is really relevant to, you said your dad is a pastor. How old were you when he became a pastor? And so like growing up in the church, I mean, you talk about the funny stuff and like what it's like to be a pastor's kid. You've talked about some more serious things too. This is not all just laughs and stuff, but, how did that shape your faith with your dad being a pastor? And not just shape your faith, but like, do you think that had a positive or negative impact on your faith?
Yeah. So I literally grew up in the church. My dad pastored he recently retired last year, pastored for 48 years. So
that is so long, bro.
Before I was even born,
so long.
He was doing this. So, literally grew up in the church. We, watching him and my mother just work with people in the church, meet with people all day, travel back and forth to Indianapolis, and they did mission work as well. They traveled all over the world, all over the country. So I got
You've talked about that on your podcast
so
too, haven't you?
I've got to see that, and I'm very blessed. I looking back on it, like I'm so blessed, and I'm in awe. Like I don't know how they did so much, and then also like raised us. They were gone a lot. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, they were gone a lot, but I never felt like they abandoned me or anything. Like I always felt like they were right there still. Like they were gone, but they were always still there. Yeah. And they were still very active in our lives. They weren't just like, go over there. Yeah. I feel like we were always doing things together. They were always there at basketball games, football games, supporting.
And that's kind of the stereotypical pastor's kids experience, at least from what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's like somebody even, one of my videos kind of took off a little bit, I think on TikTok, and he was talking about being in ministry, and somebody commented on it, and it was just kind of, he kept on going about how his dad was never there, all this stuff. He wasn't going to be the same type of person that his dad was, and he was going to make sure he was going to be there for his kids. But it also sounded like, just reading between the lines, that meant that he wasn't going to be in ministry because of that. And so like when you purposefully decide I'm not doing this is a career path I'm not doing because of what I experienced as a pastor's kid, like
Yeah.
that sucks. So you don't feel like that though,
No,
which is awesome.
no.
It's
Like,
really refreshing to hear, actually.
and you know, my parents, they were the same. You know, they weren't like one way over here and then come home completely different. Like, we saw that all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they really lived the life that they preached and teached about. They weren't, you know, wishy-washy back and forth. They loved each other, treated each other with respect and kindness and stuff. So, like, they're great role models, even now, you know.
Yeah.
So I look up to them a lot, and so positive for sure, positive for sure. And I knew that to be a pastor, it takes a lot. You know, it takes a lot, huge commitment, not just for the pastor, but the family and stuff, sacrifices and things like that. So I saw how hard my dad worked. Didn't always understand until I got much older. Didn't always appreciate it as much until I got older. Like, man, my dad was, and my mom, they were like, they were in there, man. They were really doing it. So it's definitely positive. And again, like I said earlier, like I was good at faking it. You know, I was pretty good at faking it. But as I did get older, like some of that stuff, or a lot of that stuff that I learned in church and how I was brought up, like I couldn't stray from it too far because it was just so ingrained into me that like me trying to get outside of that was like really hard and uncomfortable for me to do. And I'm thankful for that now because that kept me from a lot of things.
Yeah.
Kept me from a whole lot of things, a whole lot of trouble that I could see myself getting into. Like had I would just went a little further, but I always like felt a little tug like, hey, yeah.
Right.
And I think that was how I was raised in the church, you know, growing up in the church, and I also feel like that was the Holy Spirit as well, keeping me from different places, from different people, from different things, and so I couldn't shake some of that stuff, you know. So I would say to listeners, parents, you know, keep taking your kids to church, keep teaching them, because you may not think that they're paying attention or they're listening, but they are, and it's getting down in there. And so like I said, like some of that stuff I couldn't shake it. And I would get angry. I'd be like, why can't I just like why can't I just do this
guilt free?
Yeah. Just like everybody else. Why can't I just go do this? And I literally have talks with myself like that. Like out loud. Like, why can't I just do it? I just want to do it. But I'm thankful that I didn't, though, because that, you know, I don't know what could have happened. It could have went down a whole different path and end up somewhere other than, you know, where I'm at now. So I'm very thankful for that. So I definitely think that is a positive. And then, you know, later on, you know, when it was getting really real, like, okay, I really need to really have a real relationship, my own relationship, not my parents' relationship, with Christ. And a lot of times I would go places, or I just use my parents' name, like, oh yeah, my dad's Pastor Sims or Bishop Sims. Oh, okay, you know.
Yeah.
And there never ever really had any pushback or anything like that. You know, just throw mom and dad's name out there and it'd be good. You know, I had one time in I think I was either in 8th grade or I was a freshman or something. And we used to have our church conventions, or they still do have them, but we used to go every year. So my parents would go. They would take us. It was like our family vacation, going to a church convention.
You know you're churchy if your family vacation is a church
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they would be all over the country and stuff, so we would get to go different places, and we'd stay in a hotel, and so that was kind of fun. At least to me, it was. Now you might be thinking like, that's so lame. That is not vacation at all. But there was a girl that I had met at church camp, like the year before, And I'm like, oh, you're going to convention? Yeah, I'm going to convention. And so we met up there at the convention, and we were walking around holding hands.
You need to tread lightly right now.
This was a long time ago. It was way before my wife, but we were just holding hands, and her pastor like rolled up on us. Was like, "Who's this young man?" And I was like, "Oh, my name is John Sims. Bishop Sims is my father." So,
Oh gosh.
what's that got to do with you? I'm like, I mean, like I didn't know what to say.
Right.
He's like, are you saved? You living right? You know, he's grilling me. I'm like,
I got in 6th grade.
I'm like, yeah.
Wait, how old do you
Like,
think
you
you
know
were?
who my dad is. I know your dad very well. So
That's so funny.
that was like one of the first times that like I got checked. Like, just because they have a relationship with Christ doesn't mean you do. So, so that he shut that down real quick. Like, we weren't holding hands no more. But
After that, he said, "God's my father."
yeah, that was. I remember that
He had
very
to change his answer.
very, very vividly. And so, I mean, that made me think, and that stuck with me for a little while. For a while, I mean, even till now, I think about that. So, like that relationship, I had to get it for myself, not my mom's, not my dad's, but really make my own relationship.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on this channel. I think everybody does come to that point where they have to. I remember specifically talking about it with my brother, asking him on the very first episode, kind of when did your faith become your own? Because if you grow up in a Christian home, you kind of know the language, you know how you're supposed to act, like you said. But there does come a point where you're like, so am I going to actually open up my Bible? Like when I don't have to, or when I'm not at the retreat, or I'm not at the conference, you know, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
like, of my own will, am I gonna open up the Bible
Yeah.
when nobody else is around,
Yeah.
and try to be with God,
Yeah.
and like figure out like what is truth, how am I supposed to live, you know? And so I think there are people probably listening or watching who, you know, I'm glad you mentioned like, hey, keep taking your kids to church. It's probably doing more than you think. I would even take it a step further and say, hey, keep going to church.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna. I heard this recently. You don't remember everything you've ever eaten, but you needed it when you ate it at the time.
Yeah.
Like, you don't remember what you had
That's
for
good.
breakfast 3 weeks ago or for lunch, but you needed it at the
Yeah.
time. And it's kind of that's how spiritual food is, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how the sermons are. That's how the small devotionals are. That's how the worship songs are. It's like it gets you through moments, even though you can't look back and remember it. And I think I told our pastor that recently, just as an encouragement, like, keep preaching,
Yeah.
like keep doing it week in, week out, in the small Bible study, in the big church, like just keep doing it. And then I think my encouragement for everybody would just be like, keep doing it. And if you're thinking
Yeah.
about it and you're on the fence about it, and you're like, man, I don't even know where to go to church. And you even alluded to it earlier, like, I don't even want anything to do with Christians, but I feel like this draw towards like, what should I do with my life? Like, I think the Bible's a really good place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And to try to ask people, hey, what's your perspective on this? Why do you follow this?